Ang video na to ay handog ni cdkoffers.com. Marami kang mahahanap na iba't ibang uri ng software dito. May games, apps, activation codes for Windows 10. Check out our video on CDK offers in the video description. Mabilis, mura, and syempre legit dito. Madali lang mag-order, search for the software you need, add to cart, check out, daan ka sa payment options nila. Wala pa isang minuto, finished. May legit working CD key ka na sa software na pinili mo. Gamitin ang aming promo code para makakuha pa ng extra 20% discount sa purchase mo. Kung naghahanap ka ng mura, legit, and original software, check out cdkoffers.com.
Alright, what's up internet? Thanks for joining us. Today on In the Industry, we have a special guest, Jia Dee, who's a professional Hearthstone player. She's won tournaments both here and abroad. And she was one of our Philippine representatives to the Southeast Asian Games. And she's a Blizzard Shoutcaster. So, in fairness, sobrang wild talaga nung resume nung guest natin ngayon.
Yeah. Hello.
Thanks so much.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for agreeing to the interview. We'll just jump right in with WSOE2, which I think was the first tournament that really made your name as a player. And just to set the scene for our audience, so you in the semifinals you were going up against Lisa and you were up 2-0 and basically one win away na lang from getting to the finals. Pero nakahabol si Lisa and naging 2-2 na siya. So, what were you feeling at that point? Na parang from one game away from the finals to one game away from going home with nothing?
To be honest, Anton, ang tagal-tagal na noon. It's hard to remember. That was over 2 years ago, I think, or approaching 2 years or something. But I think for any tournament naman, when you're up so far ahead and get on the brink of getting reverse swept, as we call it in Hearthstone at least, then you feel a lot of nerves. Pero hindi naman sa wala na akong mauuwi at that point because there was prize naman until I think top 8 or
Okay.
yeah, out of 16. But obviously it's a huge difference if you get to go to the final too kasi 15K yung naging first prize dollars for that tournament.
Mm-hmm.
What was I feeling? I think the format was last hero standing in Hearthstone, which means that you kind of have still the ability to, like, if you take a loss, dapat favored ka sa next match because you can choose your next deck, whereas your opponent has to stick to the same thing. So I think I was still remaining calm overall, but I'll have to get a time machine and ask Gia from 2 years ago.
From 2 years, like how are you feeling? And then is that
Yeah.
is that common in Hearthstone? I mean, because there's a term apparently, yung reverse sweep na you're just about to win and then biglang everything the tables turn and then biglang you can get reverse swept. So that's a common thing in Hearthstone.
Yes, I would say so because all professional Hearthstone series are either best of 3 or best of 5. And so, madalas you can go down 0-2 but still come back. Especially depending on the strategies. There are some people that bring all 3 of their decks just to target one deck from their opponent. But let's say your 3 decks are weak against 2 out of 3. So, pwede talagang mangyari na mag-0-2 ka to 3-2.
And then I know you said before na going into that first tourney, WSOE2 na parang the commentators weren't giving you much of a chance. You were medyo the underdog going in. Did that did you feel na you had something to prove in that tourney?
Oh nga, no. I think, yeah, it's coming back to me now. I think they were citing Hafu as the favorite, which to be fair, she had the most tournament experience out of all of us. But I didn't feel like I was even expecting that much out of myself kasi di nga ako madalas mag-compete. I started as a caster. Until now, I'm primarily a caster. So I don't think it really added fuel. It was more like, I guess, less pressure lang, which is nakakatulong din, knowing that even if I just meet my own expectations, I won't be disappointing anyone.
Okay. Sige, still with WSOE2. So you did win against Lisa, 2-2, and then you won the final game. And then For the championship, you were up against Songbird, and then medyo different, ano naman, parang she was up 2 and you were down 1. So you were sort of, kailangan mo maghabol.
Mm-mm.
Um, no need to go back into the time machine, but do you remember anything from that match? Kasi parang, di ba, nandun
I
ka na
do.
eh. Oh.
Okay. That final series is still fresh in my mind. So buti na lang. May ganun. So Songbird, actually, better known as Cora, we were friends for a long time, even before the tournament, because she was also a caster at the time. And I remember going into game 4. I had just lost a game where I was supposed to be very, very favored. So at that time, I was like going into game 4 feeling ko na natalo na ako sa overall series, especially when I saw my opening hand, which was very slow. Because I was playing an aggressive deck, but I didn't hit any of my 1-drops. And then I played a card called Myra's Unstable Element, which draws the rest of your deck. But I didn't really hit any of the good cards off of that. So I was like, okay, eto na, my run ends here. It's okay, I did my best. Because at that time, I was already feeling like I'll just play to whatever percent out I have left, even though feeling ko most outcomes I would lose. But I think she made a mistake towards the end of maybe forgetting that I had played both of my Vile Spine Slayer, so she could have played a taunt safely and won. But instead, she played the hero card, Jaina. And then I had exact lethal in hand, so I felt like a hero. I was like, oh my gosh, I still have a shot. And then going into the game 5 lalo na because I knew I had a good matchup for game 5.
So there was really like a turning point na if she had taken that route, she would have most likely won the series.
Yeah, there was a defining decision towards the end, which I wasn't aware of at the time
Yeah.
kasi syempre di
You
ko
can't-
kita yung hand niya. But
Yeah.
when I watched the VOD and yeah, people were discussing the match afterward, there was a decision that she could have taken to win the series.
Wild So, and I don't, to be honest, I don't play Hearthstone. But is that common also for the game na there may be pivotal moments na one card either way if the player had remembered to do it or in a certain sequence?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hearthstone, just like with any card game, there's a certain element of luck, and in certain metas, the amount that luck matters can go up and down, also depending on the deck. But the way I look at it is, sometimes you can be good and still lose because of that element of luck. But if you're bad, you should never win. If you're really that bad, so like the best players in Hearthstone, you'll notice that over a larger sample size of games, they have a higher win rate than others, but nobody will hit 100%. And to achieve the highest win rate, you obviously have to make optimal decisions, which can come up in many games.
I I noticed parang the way you as a caster, the way you analyze it, it's very much like poker na it's like sort of hand selection and trying to guess what your opponent has, like familiarity with the deck, the possible deck combinations. So I was wondering as a player, do you always play the odds like, oh, this is what I should do 80% of the time? But so is that your play style, or you're more like, I know I should do this, but sometimes I just want to medyo go nuts and parang bahala na and gusto ko mag-attack or ano?
The responsible player should always play to their best odds, I would say. If you're playing on stream for no stakes, then it's common to go for the fun play or the play that maybe 2% of the time you can get a great thumbnail or a clickbait video because something crazy happened. But when you're in tournament, you should always play to your best odds. Yung mahirap lang sa Hearthstone is you can't really discreetly calculate the odds because there are so many different outcomes of cards you can draw plus where to target the cards. It's the type of strategy that you develop, I think, is from experience, and you're not really thinking of hard numbers a lot of the time, just more off of your experience. Like when I've been in a similar slot, has this type of play worked versus that play?
So you personally, in poker, like we would call it tight player na parang it's always running the numbers. You've never gone off the rails or parang you've never had a Leeroy Jenkins moment, if you're familiar with the Warcraft reference.
Well, yes, and that's also a Hearthstone card. Well,
Yeah, they put him in Hearthstone.
yeah, I would not do that in a tournament because obviously I want to win. But if I were on stream or playing a show match, ganon, then you might do something crazy just to get immortalized as a meme or something.
Yeah, Leroy didn't do too bad for himself, di ba?
Yeah.
I noticed also before, parang you said na going back to the play balancing of Hearthstone and parang yun nga, if you're a bad player, you really shouldn't be winning most of the time. Pero you mentioned in an interview na with Hearthstone may direct damage or there are certain creatures that can do direct damage that favor beginner players and that gives
Mm.
them a chance against more experienced players.
Oh, when did I say that? I guess the trope that aggro decks, as you call it, are beginner friendly is still somewhat true. But the more I got experience in Hearthstone, the more I realized that the best aggro players, it's still really hard to optimize. Like even at the top level of pro play, there can be people making mistakes with decks that on the surface seem really simple. But to introduce you to the mechanics of any card game, I would really recommend a deck that, plays minions, follows the mana curve, 1 cost, 2 cost, 3 cost, so that you can grasp the fundamentals rather than saying, okay, here's a combo deck. You don't do anything for 80% of the turns and then you win the game. That's obviously not a good way to first approach a game.
But is it a good way to win? Is that the current meta now? Parang combo or
The meta right now is pretty balanced. May ilang mga combo deck, may mga aggro, may mga control, but I would say the my favorite decks right now are aggro.
have you ever like are there any I mean, you're a pro gamer, you respect the game. Are there any tactics that you would not consider using because they seem so cheap or parang yun nga parang in Magic kasi if you played Magic parang yung mga queso decks or yung they're kind of cheap decks na wala masyadong skill involved or they use nga these cards na parang there's not much thought into it but you can still win.
I don't play Magic, but I'm familiar with the term, just like cheesy meta tier 1, tier S decks, OP decks, right? But I don't give a damn. If you're in a tournament, you play to win. You're gonna play whatever is best or what you think is the best strategy. And if no matter what Hearthstone tournament you see, people are still, the majority of the field are still gonna bring the overpowered decks. And I think that's completely fine. I mean, your pride or looking edgy, it probably would look good in a Yu-Gi-Oh anime type situation. But if
Like with the
you're gonna,
hair then parang the
yeah,
anime yeah.
yeah, try to win a real tournament with your off the wall homebrew meme deck, it's probably not gonna work out. So, and in Hearthstone, nobody who's actually serious at the game will shame you for playing the top tier decks. It's only like, rank 20 Reddit players that don't really know what they're talking about.
Is there any time na parang so you were playing, whether streaming or in a tournament, na parang you felt na parang binastos ka nung opponent mo? Like, in a subtle way, like how they played a hand or, or you felt they were just toying with you. So parang when you felt that, parang binastos mo rin siya.
Lang nung dati. Because in Hearthstone, BM usually comes in the form of emoting or roping lethal. Kahit meron na silang winning play, they'll wait until the last
Yeah,
5 seconds to do it.
exactly.
So, well, by that point, di ko na siya kayang bastusin going back kasi tapos na yung game. And if that's on ladder, there's only a small chance that I would queue into that person again. But, I don't really emote.
So it's very professional for you. Like you'll play a game, win or lose. Parang it's like move on, take the
Yeah.
experience, and then ano.
Well, yeah, it never happens in tournaments na bini-BM ka. Well, I guess there are some rare cases, but it never happened to me yet. And kung sa ladder, parang auto squelch ko na lang. Squelch is like turning off your opponent's emotes. And then, if I don't get tilted, that's just better for me. So I don't care.
Very analytical, ah. What's teabagging? I'm not familiar with this term, this concept.
That's not a Hearthstone thing. You play that in like Fortnite. I don't know. But diba that's when you stand over a dead body that you killed. And then parang form of bad manners din siya. Pero walang ganun sa Hearthstone.
Sorry. Kasi parang I got it from your interview na parang you had to pledge. I mean, as the Philippine representative, parang you promised not to rage quit and to teabag. And I'm like, I have no idea ano yung teabagging.
Yeah. Well, apparently, it's universally used in fighting games, FPS, and sports games where a player repeatedly crouches up and down over
Ah.
another player.
Oo.
So pag pinatay mo na parang you're dancing on his corpse or whatever.
Okay. Yan yung bastos. I mean, di ba? Yan yung ano,
Yeah,
parang...
maraming forms of BM
ah,
in game. Yeah.
or like I said, in Overwatch, parang you can spray paint the, like, beside the
May
corpse
ganun ba?
or...
Okay.
yeah, parang something. Okay. I'm just curious na never heard the term before. Sige, let's go back a little bit. So we mentioned WSOE2, but before that, parang just share a little bit like how you got started playing Hearthstone and then how you got from the start to WSOE2. Parang yan yung initial timeline.
Well, when Hearthstone was released, I had just graduated high school and a friend of mine just asked, "Oh, Gia, do you want to try this game?" Kasi alam niya na mahilig ako sa Yu-Gi-Oh! At least like collecting the cards. I didn't really have many kalaro for the actual game. But when Hearthstone came out, I was like, "Oh, cool! It's free to play." That was my first ever Blizzard game, and then I just got addicted to it. And then the year after, when I started in college, one of my course mates was actually legend rank in Hearthstone. So sabi ko, wow, somebody like me can get to the highest possible rank category. Paano kaya? So nagpaturo ako sa kanya. And then when I hit legend myself, I started to get serious and build actual meta decks because prior to that, I was just playing my own homebrew lists. I started to watch streamers and smaller tournaments to get a feel for what is higher level Hearthstone. And then the next year, I started joining small tournaments locally. We call them fireside gatherings na parang kung sinong may-ari ng any place can just sign up in the Blizzard website to host a fireside gathering and then they can give prizes. So I would do that every week while I was studying. And then eventually I got to cast a local event through that same group of people, which led to somebody introducing me to somebody who worked at ESL Southeast Asia at the time. Tapos nirecommend ako to cast for Malaysia Major, which was already a Blizzard official event. And from there, that's when it really took off. Na parang, oh, I made myself a name for myself in the international community. And then as I got to cast more events, I guess that's when the WSOE people considered me as an invite because that tournament was all women. And honestly, at the time, there were not that many pro Hearthstone competitors na babae. So even casters and streamers were invited to come there.
Switching gears a little, Eric Altuna from YouTube asks, noob here, smiley, how does a pro gamer train? I mean, to get to your level, what should we do?
Okay, well, I can only speak for Hearthstone in particular. And for me, getting here was a long, long road. Honestly, first thing was hitting legend rank, which is probably, I mean, that's the highest category you can hit just by playing on the ranked system or on ladder. And from there, try to join open cups. There's online tournaments that are being run. If you check the Hearthstone Philippines page, marami din nag-host ng tournaments. And from there, if you just win or place well in a certain event, then you'll start to get your name out there. I make it sound really easy, but like starting from scratch to getting to legend, that took me a whole year and a half, right? So for some people, it can be much faster if you try hard, but it really depends how much time you want to commit.
And legend means parang less than top 1%, diba, of all players
Parang
currently.
ganun, yeah.
How much for Hearthstone, like you can buy the booster packs or you can buy like to get additional cards, diba? But you can also grind. Like I think you get gold if you win, and then you can apply that to buying. What would do you really need a budget like to keep up with the cards and to make sure that your deck is competitive?
If you want to go highest level, yeah, I think you do need to spend. Pati ako, even though I play Hearthstone regularly, every time a new expansion drops, I'll still spend to make sure that, I don't have to spend that much time grinding. Kasi time is also money, right?
Yeah.
When I was starting out, I was completely free to play for like 3 years. And that was a sustainable thing. But now that Hearthstone has been out for 6 years already, if you're gonna go from scratch to the very highest level, then you need to invest a certain amount, I would say. I don't know the specific amount because you can't buy specific cards in Hearthstone. You spend 100 gold to buy a pack, which is like, I don't know, like $2 or something. And a single pack has 5 cards, and it's not likely that you hit the very powerful cards because you need legendaries to make most competitive decks, etc., etc.
So but when you play in a tournament, you really bring your own cards. It's not like they issue it like the tournament organizer issues certain decks now. Okay, everybody can choose from this set, parang ganyan.
So in terms of what cards are legal for any tournament, there's a cycle that it's like Magic. There are some sets that are legal for the standard set, and then every so often it will rotate, and then some expansions are moved to wild, and then the new expansions are playable in standard. As for what cards you need to bring on your own account, it depends on the tournament because smaller tournaments, yeah, maglo-log on ka using your own account. Pero pagdating sa mga Blizzard official, nowadays, let's say you qualified for Masters Tour Madrid next month. In advance, bibigyan ka ng account bibigyan ka ng password to a super account which you'll log in for that specific tournament, and then after the tournament is over, you'll no longer have access.
Okay. I think you mentioned before also na parang most of the tournaments, or at least the WSOE, I'm not sure 2 or 5, and then for the SEA Games, parang there was a sudden the certain cards were removed biglaan. Parang you were talking about it for the SEA Games na Blizzard suddenly decided to change certain cards, like to ban them or to restrict them. And so biglang you needed to appeal like last minute na, wait, can we keep the current meta? Kasi everybody sort of knows it already. Mahirap kung magbago.
Yeah. Actually, ang laking issue nun at the time because we knew that there was gonna be balance changes, although there was a miscommunication about the date when the patch would drop. So us that were competing at the SEA Games, akala namin na parang after the SEA Games pa, magiging active yung patch. Pero nun pala, day 1 of SEA Games, live na yung
Applied.
patch. And all of us had been practicing on the pre-patch meta. So that was a really big miscommunication, I think. And then, well, I brought it up with the organizers. Ako ata yung unang nakapansin. And then there was a big, I don't want to say uproar, but there was
People were upset.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then nung pinag-usapan nila internally, thankfully they were able to find a solution, which is making us competitors play on a special tournament realm. So the patch would be live for everyone else, but we were able to play on the previous patch.
Parang private server na lang na you guys logged on to. Sige.
Which is also kind of historic. Parang never pa yun nangyari in at least outside of the Chinese scene, I think.
From YouTube also, Revin Jan asks, how do you guys prepare for it? How do you prepare for big matches? Do you guys have pre-game meals or pre-game rituals?
Not really special meals or boring. I don't have any like rituals or superstition. But if I have a big tournament up, then I'll allot certain amount of time to practice, probably at least 2 weeks before kung meron. With Hearthstone, kasi preparation is as big of a part of the tournament as actually playing it itself, because you will submit deck lists without knowing what your opponent will submit. So to come up with the best lineup, you have to test, and it's really important to have a close group of practice partners who are able to and will dedicate the same amount of time to actually decide what are the 120 best cards here. And every single card could give you a couple more or less percentages. So you have to predict the field, test the lineups. And I mean, kung super hardcore and madaming ganito sa Hearthstone, may Excel sheet pa to decide what are the best decks. For the SEA Games, we were doing that for months instead of just weeks. And yeah, by the time that the actual tournament rolled around, it means na lahat ng matchups gamay mo na. And you'll have a bigger bank of experience to draw upon when you hit the specific situations that you'll hit during the tournament.
So you really need quality mock opponents. I mean, willing
Yes,
to
for sure.
try out kumbaga opposition decks or opposition research, and like what cards counter this set and parang ganon.
Kung small tournament lang siguro, kaya na sa ladder na mga random opponents, kaya mong labanan, etc., etc. But when it comes to a big tournament, it really makes a difference when you can face off against someone you know is very skilled, and letter B, kaya mong i-record yung buong match at kaya mong balikan yung each and every decision to see na tama ba yung ginawa ko dito. Tapos may mga kausap ka din na parang, like, two minds are better than one, and you can decide as a group what are the optimal decisions every turn.
There's no, I mean, it's sort of, yeah. There's a consensus, like there's a group, and then you dissect the game and you break it down. But is there ever any a time? Is there ever a time na parang mag-aaway kayo na as to the optimal approach to a certain like the group will fragment. No, we should do this or we should do that.
Well, di naman sa away, pero meron mga argument for sure about, yeah, like we're not always sure what the best line is, and you can only really find out based on running the situation many other times. And in Hearthstone, like, it's easy to be results oriented is the term that we use, na parang porket ginawa mo yung A, kaya ka nanalo. Which is not always true. There can be variables B, C, and D that went your way. And it could be that A was the wrong decision, pero nagkataon lang din na nanalo ka, something like that. So it's really difficult to verify. And for me, the only way to actually get a good consensus is to have more people talking about it or to run through the situation more times.
Correlation does not equal causation, di ba? O nga, parang A happened and I won. So therefore, if I do A all the time, I will win all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one question about the tournaments, which is kind of silly. Pero parang all of the matches na I watched in a tournament setup, you guys all have paper, and then at the end of every game, win or lose, parang you're always scribbling on the paper. What are you guys writing? Are those notes or?
Well, depende sa tournament yun, because others, and more recently, we're always just allowed to have deck tracker, which is a third-party software that will, tell you what cards have you drawn, ano pang natitira sa deck mo, ilan yung bombs na nakashuffle sa deck mo, etc., etc. So, for WSOE and for SEA games, we were not allowed to have deck tracker. So, parang, yun yung dala ko on my paper. I had my opponents and my own deck list na pag na-play na yung isang card, iko-cross out ko na parang, di na nila pwedeng gamitin to kasi nagamit na siya.
Oh, wow. So it is really like poker. I mean, sort of like, I've already seen this in play, so she's out of that, or my opponent can't play that anymore. And then it's like, kasi parang each hero has a deck, diba? Parang then you have 3 heroes usually in the tourney format.
Yeah, you have different classes. So right now there are 10 classes in Hearthstone, or heroes as you call it. And for competitive tournaments, you're supposed to bring usually 4 or 3 different decks and they must be from different classes. So di pwedeng dalawang mage, isang warlock yung lineup ko. Kailangan mage, warlock, demon hunter, ganun. So yeah.
Okay. Switching gears a little, parang do you think, or in your opinion, are you competitive by nature? Like you want to win all the time?
I would say yes, for sure. I mean,
not just
bata pa. Well, I haven't actually played that many competitive video games, but nung bata siguro, like, I just like excelling in class. I like the feeling pag top 1 ka, ganun. So, sobrang babaw, no? But yeah, I was competitive in that sense. And siguro ngayon lang nag-manifest in terms of something career-wise rather than in a school setting.
So you have a different outlet na instead of ACADS or now you have Hearthstone.
But I'm the type that would, if you're going to a friend's house and you play board games, ako yung try hard. Gusto ko talaga.
Yeah.
Monopoly man yun, or whatever. Kailangan panalo.
Okay. I mean, I guess because of you pro gamer and then caster, you've seen a lot of these parang these promo items like from Blizzard or whoever, parang these ridiculous kinda from a game, or yung just basically is very cute or kinda merchandising. What's the most ridiculous promo item that you've seen but you want it? Parang you're like, oh, I would buy that, like, or I wish they would give that to me, parang ganyan.
Well, there was a trend recently in Hearthstone and also I think Teamfight Tactics na yung mga influencers ng game na yun, pinapadalan ng custom sneakers. Adidas sponsored pa nga ata yung sa
Ah,
League of Legends. I'm not sure. But
we may have lost the stream. Wait lang. Okay, wait lang guys. Technical difficulties. Ah, yes. Okay, the excitement of doing a live interview is sometimes our third world internet doesn't cooperate. Although, in fairness, gumagana pa naman yung stream, so let's try to get Gia back on Discord. And in the meantime, I am taking note of your questions, guys. So I'll ask Gia about them pag ano, when we get her back. Renchivan, wala nang ipis. Grabe, grabe yung first stream na yun for pwede magtanong. Talagang the whole 1 hour 30 minutes nakatingin lang ako sa taas na bababa ba to? Lilipad ba to? Papatayin ko na ba yan? Damn cockroach. But let me wait. Ay. Oh wait. Okay, baka hopefully the Discord will work. Yes, but walang ipis ngayon. Okay. Yes. Audio na lang.
hello, testing.
Yes, that's good.
Okay.
Yep, sorry, you got cut off sa may sneakers. Parang Adidas for League of Legends.
Was that on my end? Sorry, parang wala namang issues on it. But yeah, for Teamfight Tactics, merong atang Adidas collaboration, something something. And for Hearthstone, there was also Scholomance Academy shoes that I never got. They're not really ridiculous, pero ayun, nainggit ako.
Sorry, this was shoes also?
Yeah. I forgot kung branded ba or not, but it
Ah,
was just part of like a package because the aesthetic of the expansion was back to school. So may robe, may parang spell book, tas may shoes din na pinadala sa mga influencer.
oh, as it was like a whole outfit, di lang yung sapatos, may robe and
yeah.
okay. Grabe yung mga ano ngayon ha. Grabe yung merchandising or yung more like courting the influencers. Grabe. Grabe yung ano.
Those are sale. Exclusive merch lang yun eh.
Yeah, but sometimes no, parang like you don't know, like you never use them or something, but sometimes you just see an item na parang I want it. Parang it looks cool or ano. Although I guess the shoes are more practical, fairness. So, you mentioned also that you played Yu-Gi-Oh before, although wala ka masyadong kalaro. I also know parang you played Pokemon before. Is there anything about the mechanics in those games that you miss na wala sa Hearthstone?
Yu-Gi-Oh! I only played on the Nintendo DS, yung mga single-player games. Nakakamiss yung pwede kang maano sa Shadow Realms sa YouTube joke. I don't know. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not a balanced game. It is really wild, and I don't see it ever becoming like
Super
an
mainstream.
actual esport.
Yeah.
I know there are Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments, but I think that the game is too complex and too difficult to balance for it to ever become a true esport. Nakakamiss lang yung the fact that they have dual discs. That was, nung bata ako, parang sobrang angas tignan. Like, the anime was really cool.
To be honest, I've never played. So parang I only see them, but like I've never And then I came across like one or two YouTube channels with like the images and stuff, but I'm not really
Mm.
familiar with the play and like even the anime. Parang I'm not too familiar with. Is it like Naruto na sobrang haba? Like the story just goes on and on.
The first seasons are not that long, honestly, but like after a couple seasons, magbabago yung buong cast. So it's like
Ah.
they're still playing the game, but it's not Yugi who's the main character anymore. And I stopped watching after GX because at a certain point, naging motorcycles na yung eme nila. I don't know. They had some gimmick about riding motorcycles while playing, and then I was already too old by that point to watch it.
Sige, let's go back to Hearthstone. So you won WSOE 2 against you defeated Songbird for the championship. And then so you got invited back for WSOE 5, which was parang you're the returning champ. Did you need to go through the round robin also, or since you're the defending champ, you're just sitting there pretty and then just waiting for like sino ba
Yeah,
ano?
I was. Oh my gosh, that tournament was ang sarap-sarap ng buhay ko nun. I was just doing nothing for. Actually, I was doing something. I was doing media for the first day. Grabe yung production value ng WSOE. That's not what most Hearthstone esports look like. Ah. Parang kakaiba lang sila with all of their esports titles because they've also held WSOE for Dota, for FGC, etc. And they will always try to, they want to emulate actual MMA type promotions. Kaya yung mga poster namin black and white, tapos may mga promotional video na parang fino-forge pa yung medallion na price namin. Tapos nag-shooting pa kami sa isang gym na puro actually mga, actual boxers yung kasama ko. Tapos parang ako, what the heck am I doing here? But, nakisakay na lang ako because of course, that's the least I could do. They invited me back to
Yeah.
their tournament, which was, really an amazing experience. So in Hearthstone, there's not really a concept of a defending champion who will only need to play one match because it's a card game. Again, one match is not a good sample size. It's better to have many rounds of Swiss.
I know I saw some of those YouTube promotional videos, especially for the WSOE 5. Parang yeah, it's like a furnace, parang it's like a forge type, and then like for the first 30 seconds, it's just like people hammering, they made chains. I'm like, is this for a video game? Parang,
Yeah,
parang
it was
yeah.
so much. Pero enjoy lang din. Parang naging meme na rin siya. From the very beginning, when they announced that the tournament is called The Return of Jia, I was already like, I'm not.
Yeah.
We can't take this too seriously,
Yeah.
guys. Parang Star Wars no Return of Jedi.
Yeah, they
It
called
was
it
good times though.
they called it Return of Gia. Oh, then parang sobrang hype up nga na ano. Parang I was like, wow, this really yeah, it's like MMA style na. And then parang you're facing each other like in the imagery, parang ganon. It's like very
Parang, I think from that, it's proven that you shouldn't treat esports exactly the same as traditional sports. Hindi lang talaga siya mag-work unless you want it to be a meme, which is, fair play.
yeah, that'll give you more media mileage, diba? Kung parang naging viral and then ano.
Sabagay.
But in WSOE 5, so you are for that format anyway. You were the defending champion, and you went up against Pathra for the finals. We do have a screenshot, and in sort of in the same format or sort of a repeat of WSOE 2 in the finals. Parang Pathra goes up 2, and then you have won 1, so you need to win 2 straight to win. At that point, kasi parang you've had more experience, this isn't your first, rodeo, parang do you feel na I got this kahit na, you need to win 2 in a row?
I think I was just thinking more on the matchups na I think the first of the 2 that I needed to win, confident pa kasi favored yung matchup. But the very last one, I wasn't necessarily sure who was favored. But in the end, I think nagkamali rin siya or something. Like, I've been pretty fortunate that, we were always playing in these weird metas in WSOE kasi kakaiba rin yung format na gamit nila just to make it a bit more eye-catching. So not everybody got to practice as much as they wanted to. And in the end, I was still able to take the series. And I'm glad it always goes 3-2 kasi yan lang naman yung airtime ko for that matchup. So,
Sulit na, di ba? At least parang, oh, yeah. I do actually remember the commentary for that match. And parang the commenters, I mean, yun nga, I don't play Hearthstone, but the casters were saying na, parang if they had just gone one, like, sorry, I don't even remember the card details or something, but they did mention something like, maybe the third or fourth game na if Patra had done X, it might have been a different outcome, but she missed it or something.
Yeah, parang may ganun din. I think there was some board clear. This was like about a year and a half ago. So sorry, I don't completely remember. But ayun, good times. Because we were all friends in that tournament. So more than anything, parang nice reunion yun.
So you played with these guys before, like your opponents in SOE2, WSOE2, and WSOE5 are either online or you know them from your casting work.
Yeah. And the Hearthstone community is pretty tight. Like if you've been to several LANs, parang magiging familiar face ka na rin. And everybody, sobrang ingay ng mga tao sa Twitter. So we all kind of are familiar with each other. And in Patra's case, she's also a streamer. So, I've seen her stream and she knows me also.
Mario Shimuzu from YouTube asks, if I may, Miss Gia, do you play different genres of games or solely Hearthstone lang?
I do play different games, but Hearthstone lang yung esport ko, or the only one that I play competitively seriously. But in my free time, I love like single player games. Like my start as a gamer was really Nintendo games, Zelda, Pokemon, those types of RPGs, and kaka-release lang ng remastered the Mario games on the Switch, so I'm gonna get on that soon. Kaso may work pa.
Well, the season ends in 3 weeks, diba? You mentioned.
Yeah, but there's a couple more events after that. But
Ah.
yeah, for sure, towards the end of the year. And then right now, nakisakay rin ako sa Among Us craze, Fall Guys, ganun.
Mm-mm. I know, parang, well, I sort of share na growing up, parang the introductory video games for Nintendo, parang there was always NES or SNES or all of the different consoles.
Although wala namang, di naman ako ganun. N64 yung kinalakihan ko.
Sige, I won't mention na lang the first NES or the first Nintendo console we had. Pero actually, I haven't played the latest Zeldas or like sobrang big ngayon yung Animal Crossing. Parang may crossover appeal. Even people who weren't gamers are like, oh, Animal Crossing, and then they get the DS.
It was wildly popular. I'm not sure because of quarantine or just inflated popularity because of quarantine. But yeah, even my friends na di masyadong gamer, they were pulled into it because it's a really nice introductory game. There's no stressful element about it. It's just building your own island. So similar to The Sims in that regard, na parang casual game lang din. And I love Animal Crossing. I played it ever since the first GameCube title.
Hindi ba you need to pay back the raccoon? Like there's like a money lender, like there's a user.
Si Tom Nook.
Tom Nook, yeah. But it's not stressful. Like you don't feel na
no.
yeah.
Wala namang deadline yung loan. Parang kung gusto mo lang magpa-renovate ng bahay, kailangan mo siyang bayaran. But you're not forced to. You can just fish and catch bugs for the whole game if that's what makes you happy.
Sobrang chill lang sa Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
Revin Jan from YouTube asks, is there any trash talking in tournaments, or do you guys wear glasses like in poker? So is there sort of like that I guess I sort of like is there intimidation going on a little bit, kind of like medyo mind games at tournaments?
I would say, I mean, nasa tao na yun, and iilan lang sa mga Hearthstone players yung talagang willing to be a heel with their branding, if I can use the term. Most people are just like, they just want to play the game and they're very friendly with everyone. But the people who do trash talk online, they're not even that serious about it. Parang alam lang nila na just to stir up drama, but it's not an actual fight. So our community is very tame. Some people might call it boring, but I would rather call it wholesome.
That's quite surprising actually, kasi medyo sikat tayo. I mean, yung gaming culture natin sa Pinas, medyo paminsan toxic.
Pinas,
Yeah, di ba? Parang like in different games, maybe like Dota or something. It's really like very in your face about everything, like you suck and I don't know why you did that. I mean, 'di ba, very tame na nga yung you suck.
Ganito kasi yun, Anton. May mga Pinoy, tas may mga Pinoys. So it's two separate things. And then sa Hearthstone, actually admittedly di naman ganun kasi yung Hearthstone sa Pilipinas, but karamihan sa mga Hearthstone players na Pinoy are not of the Pinoys variant. And wala rin namang opportunity for in-game chatting because it's not a team game. The most you can do is try to add your opponent after the game to message mo siya. So, it's not really a thing.
Like after the fact, it's a trash talk mo siya. Like, parang you don't
May
care if you
mga
lost.
ganun, may mga ganun. May mga trolls on ladder. Kunyari, sobrang salty na tinalo mo siya. They're gonna add you and
And
try to say, oh, I hope I cut your balls off, something like that. In response ko naman, I don't have balls.
Jokes on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I did notice actually that the Hearthstone casters in general are much more laid back compared to the Dota casters. Like you watch you watch a Dota game and there's a lot of screaming. There's like, di ba? Parang it's like, oh my god, blah, 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 di ba? And then, yung sumikat rin tayo kasi sobrang bilis natin magsalita. Like, di ba, parang we also became a meme, like, casters in Tagalog. Yeah, we're di ba? But the Hearthstone casters, are very chill. They're very relaxed. They're very cerebral. They're analyzing yun nga what's going on. Is that a conscious choice or it's more because of the way the game is presented? You just really don't get as wild as the Dota casters.
The nature of the game.
Mm.
Like sa Dota, there's opportunities to make big plays, right? Teams can, like one person can do a major killing spree, and there are hype moments. In Hearthstone, like you can technically predict any outcome, or not predict, but there's hardly any outcomes that are completely blindsiding to you, right? And for casters, our job is to explain what's happening in the players' brains, because 90% of the game happens in their brains. And what you actually see on the screen, di na namin kailangan paliwanag yun for most people who have ever played Hearthstone. It's gonna be so boring if we're doing play-by-play, like, oh, I'm gonna play my Sorcerer's Apprentice. He played the Sorcerer's Apprentice! Oh my god! Hindi siya pwedeng ma-hype. Kasi alam mo na kung ano yun. So, our job is just to explain bakit rather than ano. Which is, I will admit, it's probably gonna make it less of a spectator esport. It's less entertaining than others. But, some people prefer that. And some people appreciate both. And for me, I have the utmost respect for Dota casters, FGC, and MOBA casters in general, because they have to have so much energy, and really they're the type that can hype up a crowd of thousands, right?
I know you watch them sometimes. I mean, it's really a performance on its own. Like, aside pa from the game, parang you can just really, like, you don't know anything about Dota, but you can watch the casters kasi they really get into it. And then just the mental energy to keep track of, like, 6 players, diba? Kung 3-on-3 or something, 4-on-4, parang just to keep track of what everybody's doing, and then, oh, ito nag-ulti na to, or ito naka-cooldown, so pwede siyang ma-ambush, parang ganyan. It's really taxing for, I mean, Hearthstone, of course, is also super taxing because you need to get into the mind of the 2 players. Siguro ibang multitasking yung sa Dota kasi yun nga, there's so much going on screen. So, but yeah, they do get really, like, very active when they cast, no?
It's because of that energy and the community here in the Philippines. Kaya nagkaroon ng lakad matatag, di ba?
Speaking about gaming culture, well, games have been on the rise lately kasi pandemic, everybody's working from home. Although especially in the States, parang they've been in the news for less nice things. In the last couple of months, parang ang daming allegations against top streamers, or even in wholesome communities, like you think Super Smash Bros. I mean, like, diba, the game Super Smash Bros, it's so cute. Parang it's the fighting game where there's no blood. But even in that community, there's been a lot of allegations of inappropriate behavior and things like that. And so I guess my question is, we do want the industry to become bigger here sa atin, like pro gamers and the whole streaming thing. Parang everything about the industry, sana it'll become bigger. It'll sort of take on what it's like abroad. But in your experience, since you've been there, you're in the scene, how do you think we can sort of sidestep or avoid a lot of the negativity, negative language, bad behavior of the things we're seeing now, like in the States?
I think to give context to this question, I'll talk about why I think this has become prevalent. So, for me, as somebody who started out with esports, just having it as a hobby, but one that I really, really look forward to. Kunyari, as a caster, maybe every 3 months, I would get to travel to a LAN and then work on this event and see all of my friends that I only see online. So, the LANs and the traveling aspect and the whole community, like, engaging in one big party, is what it feels like. The idea of that extremely enticing to people. That's what keeps a lot of people playing esports, even though it's not their whole career or even if it's not sustainable. It's the fact that you can connect with people with the same interest and meet up halfway across the globe every so often. But because it's kind of a novelty like that, it's treated as a party and a competition. Parang nabablur yung line between how seriously do I take this and what is the appropriate behavior. Because, well, in Hearthstone, for example, like if you lose on day one, you go 0-3 drop, then it's already kind of understood na iinom ka afterwards.
Party
Or
time.
gagala kayo. Yeah, yung
yeah.
ibang mga talo,
Yeah.
you're gonna explore the city, etc., etc. Which is, that can be, well, it's a great thing, but it's also a dangerous thing. I mean, I think that the most important thing is to establish, like, for people of a certain age to be able to compete. And like, I don't like the idea of minors being able to go out without parental consent to events where people might be drinking or kung saan saan na lang pupunta. So I think there probably needs to be stricter supervision of minors. And also, I don't know, as the gaming industry evolves a little bit more, or as esports evolves a little bit more, I hope we can try to treat these events more like traditional sports events, that you're there for the competition primarily, and then you can have fun at a different point, but hindi na yung it's understood as the whole competition and party is part of the same deal. It's really difficult. But in terms of other bad behaviors, like what were you saying, language?
Yeah, the toxicity maybe, or ano.
Toxicity. Yeah, that one will just have to come with time, because in gaming culture was born of internet culture, where people are used to not having their face attached to their name. Like, they're empowered by anonymity. Tas kung ano-ano na lang yung sinasabi. As a woman, I've been bearing the brunt of that just for appearing in any gaming space. And we need better moderation from the companies running these games, like swifter bans if somebody reports that, hey, somebody was being sexist to me, or they were propagating hate speech, then they should be quicker to act and resolve on these cases. And for me in particular, we also just need everyday people to police each other and say, dude, do better. Or parang, kunyari, ang daming mga nagpo-post na babae just online, like, I played one game of Valorant, spoke on voice chat, here is what I heard. And yes, obviously the culprit is the troll who is saying go back to the kitchen, but there's also like 3 or 4 other guys in the call who are not telling him na mali yung sinasabi niya. So it's not enough for like the good people to stay silent. They also need to help discourage the bad people from feeling like it's okay for them to say these things.
On the topic actually of misogyny, you tweeted last May or something, parang it was a screenshot. I'm posting it now sa ano. So it's a comment on you as a caster, and I guess it's a guy. Kasi basically saying na Hearthstone, sobrang dali na ng Hearthstone ngayon. Now we have this girl who probably is not legend rank, definitely has 1/1000th of the games of any other player. And that's why she can understand, kasi sobrang babaw, sobrang simplistic na ni Hearthstone. And then he goes on to connect it to StarCraft. There's an obscure Terran play that he says na, if she had to comment on this, like, she'd break and then she'd be replaced by a guy. So that's just an example of random parang misogyny. How do you deal with that as a caster? And
well, number one is humor. I mean, kita naman the fact that I tweeted it. Alam ko naman, and alam naman ng mga people that follow me that this is not somebody to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
That particular comment was just super funny to me, kasi umabot na sa point na di niya matanggap na magaling ako. So yung mismong Hearthstone na lang yung sinabi niya, it's a worthless, easy game. Parang hindi pwedeng may magaling na babae. So ibig sabihin, madali lang yung ginagawa niya. Parang ganun.
That's how far...
the type of mental gymnastics you need to make that comment. I was just... That's so funny.
That's how far you've dragged the game down, man. That's super. It's super simplistic now. Yeah. Actually, I was when I came across this tweet, I was like, wow, it's really endemic. No, I mean, like, you have yeah, you have these kind of anonymous people. Probably a guy, but just you. Yeah, probably a guy. So you have these anonymous guys online and posting things like this, and then parang it's not. There's nothing productive about it. Like there's no productive commentary. Like, oh, maybe the commentary would be better if you analyze it like this or like this. It's just really you're a girl. Therefore, you cannot say anything good or you cannot say anything productive about the game.
Whole spectrum of it. Obviously, this guy is one of the extremes, and to this day, I'm not sure kung if he really believes in what he's saying or if he's just trying to troll. Kasi ang
Troll.
dami ng mga tao na parang they'll make sexist jokes just to cause a stir, whether or not they even believe that women should be respected is out of the question. Like they just want to be edgy. There's a whole spectrum though, because people will also make certain comments na feeling nila harmless, na parang, oh, like, you're so much better than this girl at casting. Na parang, ba't mo na pag-isipan na kaming dalawa yung ihahambing mo? Why not anybody else? Like,
Yeah.
it's like they're subconsciously saying that there's only room for one token woman. So, feeling nila, they're pinupuri ka, ganun. But actually, they're trying to bring other women down. That type of thing. And even as small as just saying that Gia's so hot, ganun, parang, what does that have to do with the game? Like, I mean, if I were to make an OnlyFans and post pictures, then sure, you can say I'm hot. But I'm here to commentate, right? Can you talk about the game itself? Can you talk about my work? Ganun.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how we go about solving this problem. Like, I mean, I mentioned a while ago, banning moderation and policing your own friends. But obviously, as you said, the problem is endemic and it'll be a while before we really get to the bottom of it.
You said before na the industry is male dominated, from the people who design the games to the players. So from your point of view as a female gamer, what kind of characters or what kind of stories would you want to play in games?
I mean, what kind of stories I enjoy is not necessarily related to my womanhood, if that makes sense. Like, I'm fine to play games with male protagonists. I'm fine to play games with female protagonists. The stories I enjoy in RPGs, for example, a good example would be BioWare games, just because I really like the world building. But if you're asking, like, what type of stories, or like how can you write a story so that it doesn't alienate women, then it's pretty simple. Like, just follow the Bechdel, ano yun? I forgot.
The Bedwa, or yeah,
No. Wait, let me Google this. Bechdel Test. Yeah,
the one.
Bechdel Test, also known as the Bechdel-Wallace test, is a measure of the representation of women in fiction. So you just need to follow a simple rules. Does the work feature at least 2 women?
And they're talking about
anything other than a man, right?
Yeah.
So just like, I don't know, if you're making a game and you want it to be representative of real people's experience, then it would be great to have more diverse people work on the game so that they can bring their perspective into it and then say things like, oh, I think a woman would actually really talk about that in most experiences. And that applies to race, it applies to gender identity and religion, so on and so forth. So, I mean, if a story is representing something that I find true to real life, then it's a good story for me.
I thought kasi of the question. I mean, I wrote the question and then I thought about it for myself, and then parang I realized na most of the games that really impacted me in the past few years had females at the center, like Life is Strange. Ang ganda ng Life is Strange, or Horizon Zero Dawn more recently. And then kasi I came across an interview with the guy who did Last of Us. And then kasi Last of Us 2 just came out, and he was making kwento na for Last of Us, initially the story was na only women were infected with the virus. And then yeah,
I had no idea.
And then parang you can, and it's a shooter, right? So basically in the original alpha version, you were just going around shooting at women zombies. And so the women in the office were like, I get that you're trying to say something, but parang it's not a good look, man. That the all of the enemies in the game, well, all of the zombie enemies in the game are women. And then it finally changed when he became a dad. He had a daughter, and then it's like parang that put a different spin on the story, and then it became one of the most celebrated video games of recent times. So parang napaisip ako na, like, yeah, more representation seems to lead to a better narrative or parang a more satisfying story for gamers in general. I mean, yeah, guys and girls, diba? Parang mas they seem to relate more. Although the designer was also saying that, in Last of Us 2, some people are really gonna hate this. They're not gonna like the direction kasi parang you play more as Ellie instead of the adopted dad. I haven't played it myself, so I can't comment naman. But yeah, parang a lot of the games, like Horizon Zero Dawn was very good. What's that? The Life is Strange, like totally blew me away. So parang compared to like how women were represented in games before, like the classic Tomb Raider, na you can see the assets of Lara Croft. I mean, the Lara Croft's appeal was very clear from the onset when you play. So yes. So just curious, like, yeah, sana nga more representation. And just more points of view in how games are made. Although I do agree with you that BioWare is like they're amazing. Although they let me down with Andromeda, so parang I'm kind of mad at them now. Kasi
And let's not talk about Anthem, I guess.
yeah, I know.
I'm talking Dragon Age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Ako Mass Effect. I never played Dragon Age, but parang yeah, I hear they're on the same level. But the ones after that, parang when Casey Hudson left, it was like a whole thing. So parang we'll just remember them in their glory days, the sobrang ganda nung RPGs nila.
Yes.
My just like random question, why Gia as your name? Most people kasi like your teammate on the Philippine Hearthstone team is Waning Moon. We've talked about some of your mga kalaban like Pathra, Songbird. I'm just curious why when you started gaming you stuck with your name. You didn't choose a handle or you didn't choose a nickname.
Mostly laziness, honestly. I mean, I had some other handles for a while, but whenever people referred to me IRL with the handle, sobrang
Yeah.
na-awkward. Oh, cringe! So I just changed it to Gia kasi di ko talaga kinaya. I mean, some people, they prefer it. More power to them. And I feel like it would be cool if I had some catchy nickname, but it's too late. I couldn't think of one at the time. It's too late now.
You can't rebrand now. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just Gia
yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Which is like, it's not a problem.
it's not weird, like I mean, kasi usually when I play FPS, and then so you go by your name in your game. So like when somebody kills you or something, parang they shout it. So it's okay lang with you, like people are shouting Gia or whatever.
Di ako nag-FPS. But then I wouldn't mind even theoretically if I were to play.
Okay. Sige, to go back to Hearthstone, and then this is sort of in line with uh the seriousness now of esports, that things that you wouldn't think were a concern before are now because it's such a big business. Last year we had a Hearthstone player called Blitz Chung from Hong Kong, and then he was in a tournament in Taiwan, and then he had already won some money. He was still in the tourney playing, but he went on a live stream for an interview, and he had on the mask associated with the Hong Kong protest, and then he said words to the effect supporting Hong Kong democracy. And then, sorry, just to relate, I know you're familiar with the event, but just to relate to the audience na baka they're not familiar with it. Then the two casters, kawawa naman, parang they knew what was coming and they knew na, oh, we're gonna get in trouble for this. So they ducked behind their monitors. And for me, it's funny because it's kind of comical, but at the same time, you as a caster, I'm sure that's very serious na there are rules that you need to abide by and things like that. So the fallout was pretty bad. Blizzard initially banned the player, forfeited all of the money that he earned. The two casters were also fired. Eventually, there was a public outcry, and the ban just got moved to 6 months. Or sorry, he got to keep his money, see Blitzchung, and then the ban was made to 6 months, and then the casters also were put back to 6 months lang pro a ban. Although really, I mean, it's Blizzard who gets you per contract, diba? So even if there's no official ban, you could be iced out of that permanently, and they couldn't do anything about it. So you can tap out. I mean, I don't want to offend your I mean, because you are a Blizzard shoutcaster, but I was just curious about your thoughts on this. That it is a global game, and you do need to pander to a very large market in China. But at the same time, you do have um, the companies that produce our content, that we consume a lot of content, whether it's Blizzard or Disney or the NBA. Parang they have to have other considerations other than money. And sorry, it took a long time to get to this question, but um, do you feel that the ban was appropriate, or what if you were the head of Blizzard? What would you have done if something with that situation?
Okay. I feel the ban was appropriate. Even Blizzard admitted, like at the time BlizzCon happened after the event, mismong si J. Allen Brack apologized, saying that they were too quick to act on it, and in the future they'll consider more opinion. I forgot the exact wording, but basically they were admitting that they were in the wrong, which is true. That was, in my opinion, an overreaction to the actual sanction that Strong made. Because I mean, they were within their rights to impose a sanction. Kasi nga, may nilabag siyang rule, which is
Th-
in the rule book.
there
It
is a
says
rule.
you
Yeah.
cannot use this platform to propagate,
Hmm.
political ideologies, etc., etc. But do I think that it deserved that degree of punishment? No, absolutely not. Dapat first warning lang ata yun. Well, for me, I mean, uh, like, I don't think a 1 year suspension and revoking all of his earnings was appropriate. But to be completely fair to Blizzard, no matter what stance they take, they're screwed. This is an
Yeah.
international like issue. And if you ask me in particular, I do support democracy in Hong Kong, but because I care about my job, I'm not going to talk about that on that
Oh,
platform.
yeah.
I'm allowed to talk about it on my personal Twitter, even if I talk, or even if I work for Blizzard. So, and for Blitzchung, he was also aware that, kung gamitin niya yung platform ng Blizzard, there will be sanctions. And, I respect him for doing that because he was prepared to lose his career for his ideals. So, Blizzard definitely had to do something just to make sure that the rule book was being followed. Otherwise, kahit sino on their broadcast can, say whatever they want, and then you have chaos, right? If you make an exception to a rule, then they're screwed. But if they react too harshly, then obviously they can be viewed as being, pandering to China too much. So, I mean, I think the best way to have gone about it was to just have a shorter and less severe sanction. But make no mistake, no matter what outcome, they were going to be in a tough spot. And I'm not blaming Blitzchung for that. He did what he felt was right for his morals. I respect him for that. And, I sympathize with the
The casters.
protests in Hong Kong
Ah,
right now,
sorry.
and with the casters for sure. But it's just, I hope people understand that, like, even on the Zerd side, for the people that didn't speak out in favor of Blitzchung, may mga career din sila on the line for that.
I sorry, you casters again. The video is really comical, and I know it's a serious matter, and they yeah, that is their livelihood. Pero you could see it on their faces. Oh man, why did you have to do this on my stream? And then they duck behind the monitors, and it was really like, they could tell na there was gonna be serious fallout from this. Although actually the rule that Blizzard cited is super broad. I mean, it's just like something that if you use the platform to offend the public or to besmirch Blizzard's reputation, so it's really super broad. And it could be applied to a lot of things. Uh, but I agree with you na parang either way. It's you're in the frying pan and you jump into the fire. Parang either way you would have gone. Parang they would have been a lot of people would have gotten upset with them. Although they even extended it. There was a college match na of a pro parang esports in the States na college match.
Yeah, I'm aware. TESPA, right?
AU, I think American University, and then they mimicked or sort of they held up a sign during a match in favor of the Hong Kong protests, and then they were meted the same ban of 6 months. So, yun, parang Blizzard was trying to be consistent with that. Uh, it is a global thing, and it's just I find it interesting how different companies react to it. Like the NBA had a different stance. The commissioner came out and said na when a similar situation came up, not exactly similar, but sort of broadly along the same lines, parang he supported free speech. Although it is a difficult thing, and then now you have Disney with the new Mulan, taking fire from everybody basically. So I guess it's just as esports gets bigger, parang it's one of those things na there are international politics at play na parang it's not just play anymore, 'di ba? Parang it's not just a game. There are serious business considerations and freedom of speech issues and things like that. To go back to the YouTube questions, because parang some people feel this is taking a serious turn, so we gotta make it light again.
Okay.
Rafael from YouTube asks, question for Gia. As a token DH plebe, do I ever have a chance against sole DH players, or should I cut my losses and return to Magic the Gathering?
Uh, yeah, that's not a meta deck. If you want to excel at Hearthstone, then you have to be willing to play other decks. That's just, I mean, yung sinasabi niyang token
I
Demon
have no idea.
Hunter is
Yeah.
not a meta deck right now, whereas Soul Demon Hunter is a high tier meta deck. You can reach legend with it. So, like, I don't know. I mean, for some people, they can have fun and be satisfied with the game despite not climbing to higher rank. For some people, climbing is the fun of the game. So if you're okay with switching decks or investing a little more time to build a meta deck, like if you have the cards for Token Demon Hunter, you're not that far away from building Soul Demon Hunter, then I'd recommend that. But it's really up to you how much time you want to spend. I'd prefer that you stick to Hearthstone kasi career ko yan, so support my job.
Or-
But like, I mean, if it's not fun anymore, then you should stop playing the game. Games are there for you to have fun.
And so to be honest, like that, everything about that discussion went totally above my head. Parang I'm not kasi familiar with the cards, but I'm sure Rafael will take that to heart. Actually, kasi he's one of our staff's hardware sugar, so ano, parang yeah. So I'll ask him kung ano, parang if he'll stick with Hearthstone or go back to Magic. But hindi yun planted question in fairness, parang he was just watching the stream. MM from YouTube asks, did your parents ever tell you were wasting time playing games?
My parents are super, super supportive. They're really nice. I cannot recall a single time where they told me it's a waste of time. They have expressed concern. Kunyari, nung may time kasi na in my fourth year of college, parang nahirapan na ako to finish my thesis while balancing casting events. So there were times when they asked me, are you able to handle all of it? But they were very supportive from the start kahit madelay ako or even if I wanted to focus a bit more on casting, as long as I got to graduate, they said they're okay with it. So I'm very grateful for that. And they trusted me ever since I was young to be able to, limit my gaming and still maintain grades. So in the end, I did get a little bit delayed, but I think if I had to ask myself, would I rather be delayed but have no casting career versus graduate on time would I rather be delayed but with a casting career versus graduate on time and not have a casting career? Siyempre, pipiliin ko yung what actually happened. So.
Casting career. You brought up college, and then I know your course was molecular biology at UPD. Have you taken anything you learned from college? Have you applied any of that to your current profession?
I would say soft skills I learned in college, yung pakikisalamuha and just talking, being sociable and public speaking, presenting things, that type of thing is extremely useful in casting and just in your personal growth in whatever career college is. I mean, in particular, UP was really good for me. In terms of what I learned in the classroom, though, if this is a reach, maybe a little bit from statistics helped me in just how to establish good Excel sheets and what odds actually matter and which ones are a trap when thinking about the odds of drawing cards or something like that. But it's very minimal. My course had nothing to do with my current career.
But in fairness, even your vocabulary, you talk about sample size, you talk about calculating the odds. So I mean, yeah, that's something a statistics course would have helped you out, or parang the introduction to statistics, and then you can apply it now when you're when you're doing your mulling it over your segment for the Hearthstone YouTube, but more the soft skills like in presentation.
Yeah.
Di ba yun sa high school na parang
Well, both.
okay.
But let's be real, like high school, I think you can get away with, relying on group mates. And to college, a certain extent din. Pero parang kung di mo seryosohin sa college, at least yung culture sa UP, kung pababayaan mo yung class, pababayaan ka din ng prof, and you won't learn from it. So what you really get out of college is a factor of how much you put in the first place. So for me, figuring out how much effort I really wanted to expend into something and the amount of respect I gained for that is something that can be applied in real life also. More so than in high school na parang ibe-baby ka pa rin and kahit magkamali ka, parang they'll hold your hand and try to get you to catch up with everyone else.
In college, like for group works, inevitably, like you're a group of 5, and then mauwi ka sa group na nobody wants to work. Would you be the type of person na ikaw gagawa ng lahat and then put everybody's name on the final paper or the final project, or parang Kebs, bahala kayo. I'm gonna do the work, but I'm gonna put my name. Or you'd be like, oh, if you're not gonna work, I'm not gonna work, and then let's just see at the end of the sem where the chips will fall.
No, I mean, I was the former for sure. I mean, luckily in my actual course, we are tryhards, we're nerds. So, sa mga major ko, I mean, matitino naman yung mga group work ko. And then, in my particular case, if anything, there were times na pabigat ako because sometimes I would ask if I can do my portion of the group work in advance because I need to go to an event this weekend. Mag-abroad ako. So, I like to think that I did everything I could on my part. But when it came to the GEs, and then there are people from whatever course that feel like, oh, if there's a nerd in my group, then maybe I can give
So,
them
na,
more work.
yeah.
Sila yung problematic. And by then, I would just be like, if they're not gonna help, they're not gonna help. Huwag na lang natin ilagay yung name group work. Or kung may peer eval, parang bahala na yung prof. So,
just like back to Hearthstone, sorry, just like random question. Why is it pronounced Hearthstone and not Hearthstone? Di ba parang kasi spelling dapat Hearthstone?
make English.
Yeah.
I mean, if you Google how to pronounce it, it's Hearthstone because hearth is a fireplace.
So it Hearthstone.
It's an actual word. So.
Yeah. Like the fireplace, right? I mean yeah. I saw a poor interviewer kasi on ANC. He was doing the Seaball interviews, and then his first pronunciation was Hearthstone, but then he realized that all of you guys were calling it Hearthstone, and then he was like, oh, but in fairness, mabilis naman mag-shift yung interviewer. So parang I was just curious how it became Hearthstone. But anyway, parang it's more like kasi parang the pronunciation for Hearth is
pronounced.
Yeah, sorry. Parang random.
I don't know about semantics.
Because it's like such a big game, and I'm like, paano ito naging Hearthstone? And then, sorry, I even remember when first it was desktop, and then when Hearthstone got to Hearthstone on phone, there were like a lot of ads. Blizzard was pushing out a lot of ads na Hearthstone on phone. And then I was wondering na bakit to naging Hearthstone? Anyway, sorry, wala lang. Just like a random question about the game. Because I can't understand the statistics and the clerics and the mage. Because I'm parang not too familiar with the game. Any other? Have you ever supported a Kickstarter or Patreon?
For Patreon, actually may recently akong dinonate na parang it was a Filipino trying to make an RPG that the name of it escapes me, pero parang grassroots game developer na I was supporting monthly. And pag sa Patreon, di ba, they post monthly content to keep you updated. But after a while, wala na siyang pinapost. So I pulled out my support. I mean, I understand that's a possibility. From the beginning, I knew naman it's not 100% that they're gonna actually finish the game or that it will be successful. But I just thought that it would be really cool on the off chance na magkaroon ng full-grown Filipino, not AAA, but high-quality game.
Yeah, na parang matuloy talaga and to see it from start to completion. Then no explanation dun sa Patreon niya why he stopped.
Wala.
It's just like radio silence. Like, parang he just ghosted all of you guys, all of his supporters.
But to be fair, I mean, maraming nahihirapan ngayong pandemic. I would imagine it's something related to that. And, it's not like they personally asked me to donate. Like, I saw what they were posting. I made my own decision to donate. I understood the risk. Maybe my investment doesn't have any turnout. And I don't have any regrets.
Your team for Hearthstone, or I know you're sponsored or you're connected with Bren Esports. How does that work? So it's a full-time Hearthstone team, and then you get matched against other Hearthstone teams in the country?
So actually, Brand Esports doesn't have a formal Hearthstone team right now. My role with Brand Esports is esports ambassador for Hearthstone. So it's more like a
Ah,
brand ambassador type thing
okay.
because because I'm not even a I don't mainly compete as a pro player right now. I'm more of a caster. But I do still carry their brand on my social media. So ganun yung arrangement namin.
Ah,
For other esports which are more active in the Philippines, then they actually have signed contracts for playing and representing this team in competitions. Kunyari yung sa ML team namin.
how do you deal with nerves? And are there different kind of nerves, like if you're competing in a tournament versus casting versus you have to do something completely unrelated for the first time, like you're learning how to drive or learning how to bike, or i- or by nature parang you don't get nervous with those kind of situations.
Oh, I do. I still get driving. Oh my hindi
Driving?
ako magaling mag-park. Yeah.
Ah.
Lalo na sa Makati. I can't drive.
Ah.
It's so hard. But I at first I would get very nervous while casting my first ever time. Like my heart would beat nonstop, start to finish at a higher pace than usual, just because there's so many people watching. But I think with anything in life, you can get used to it, right? So the more I accumulated experience and the less I started to give a damn about the haters, parang bumababa na rin yung nerves. So I will still get nervous every now and then, depending on the stakes of the event or who's watching, or maybe there's some additional pressure. Like with SEA Games, obviously that was a whole different platform, even though I'm playing the same game. It can be nerve wracking. But I try to just focus still, despite the nerves. In Hearthstone, there's a finite amount of decisions in front of you. If you can still use your 90 seconds to choose the best decision, doesn't matter how fast your heart is beating, you'll be fine.
Results oriented. If you can hit on the proper strategy, if you can make the right decision when the chips are down, parang all of the nerves are worth it.
Yeah, parang ganun.
Kasi in the Philippines, or like driving, it's not like that. Like there are always just bad decisions. Like there's no one like
Well,
good decision.
Yeah, hers and driving are completely different matters. If you misplay in driving, pwede kang
you
mamatay.
yeah, there are serious consequences.
Pwede kang mamatay tao,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
not good.
Oo. Pwede ka mahuli.
Yep.
Um, are there any Hearthstone players you admire? Kasi their strategies are so innovative. Like, when the meta changes, you notice that they're the first ones na, ang galing mo parang na-spot mo yun kaagad. Like, this card with this card, or this hero, or some combination. Are there any consistent players that you think na, I wish I were like that. Like, I could come up with those strategies.
So many. Well, yung idol ko ngayon, si Lion, DK Lion. She is our current global finals champion and the most successful female Hearthstone player by a wide margin. And probably the first woman to ever win the highest possible title in a general esport. I'm not 100% sure of that, but she won last year. And in terms of deck building, there's many people on Twitter. Like, honestly, there are so many people that not even one name really stands out to me right now. Yung mga idol ko is more of like how consistently they play rather than their deck building. Like in Asia Pacific, which is the region I cast, idol ko si Surrender. Pogi pa siya. And then in Europe, I really admire Bunny Hopper, etc.
Oh, so again, sample size. Parang if they can consistently win regardless of the meta, regardless of the games, the large number of games that they compete in. Sige, parang sorry, medyo late na pala. Parang wrapping up na lang, like just a couple of questions. I noticed na like if you don't mind me being intrusive a little, parang you have a public Facebook page for your facebook.com/Jia Dee Gaming. You have a Twitter, and of course you're active casting and streaming sometimes. Pero parang there's also an ambivalence there. Is there an ambivalence there about going all in as a public figure? I noticed your YouTube. You have two YouTube channels.
I don't plug my YouTube.
Yeah.
Wow, you went deep.
Yeah, I research for these things, man.
Okay.
So is there an ambivalence there? It's just like parang nakakatamad lang kasi mag-update. Like there's so many channels and so many things you need to update.
The YouTubes were not something I intended for Hearthstone content. Like I made that when I was younger, when I was making piano covers, that type of thing. na it would be nice if I could do that consistently. Pero tama ka, tinatamad lang ako. I mean, okay. I understand like many people say that I should stream consistently. I can, make a whole career out of it. But to me, I think casting is my career. I'm happy with the amount I make off of that. And I might consider streaming more in the future, but right now it doesn't seem like something fulfilling to me to do regularly.
Yeah, because that's a whole different
Yeah.
grind, no? I mean,
Mhm.
as a caster, I'm sure the schedule is also very grueling, but for a streamer, also equally very demanding on your time, and you need to put in a lot of effort. I mean, sort of same with your career now, diba? So parang why would you want to do two super stressful things at the same time? But BJ David from Facebook asks, what do you think of the current Hearthstone meta? And he stopped at Whispers of the Old Gods because it became
Mhm.
pretty much a slot machine with Yogg Saron.
Uh, well, right now, I think the meta is pretty balanced. At least 8 out of the 10 classes have top tier decks that are playable, in my opinion. Um, there are certain decks that I feel need to be nerfed because they can just power spike early and you can lose to them. In my opinion, Druid is not really that fun to play against. The big controversy right now is Tempo Mage because it's so much created by, or a lot of card generation that doesn't start in the actual deck. Some people like it, some people don't. For me, I think it's fine. I just want there to be more opportunities, honestly, like more competition rather than grandmaster. So while I'm fine with the meta, I hope that the competitive environment has more opportunities.
Ralph from Facebook asks, any advice for people with ladder anxiety? He always seems to choke when he's a win away from legend.
I mean, if it's just a matter of nerves, then I guess you have no choice but to keep doing it until you're not nervous anymore. But I mean, for me, it's like just it's not that big of a deal kung wala namang nanonood. I mean, I think it's fine. Just don't get too in your head about it. You have your deck tracker open, you have the cards in front of you. Just play like you normally do, and eventually you'll get there if your win rate has been positive going up to one game before Legend anyway. Kaya ba yan?
Sige, last two questions. First, has the lockdown made you realize something new about yourself? I mean, we've been in lockdown since March. It's September already. And it's a weird thing for everybody being stuck at home like all of the time. Has there been something that you realize about yourself now? Ganun pala ako, or yeah, parang anything surprising that you unearthed because of the lockdown?
I think reinvigorated my love for anime. Oh my gosh, I watched so much anime during the lockdown. Kasi I was really into it nung siguro early high school and then I stopped for a long time. Pero nung nagka-lockdown, I've binged so many series and I'm living my best life, honestly. No, I mean
Yeah.
obviously it would be nice to see everyone again, but man, I love anime. That's what I realized.
But everybody else is optional. I can just stay at home with the anime. Parang everybody else can visit once a month. Parang, but I'm okay with the anime, with watching anime. I asked kasi the previous interview we did was with Ergo. He's a pro Magic gamer. And then I've known him for a long time. And when I asked him that question, he's like, kahit siya, nasasawa na daw siya sa games. And then for me, kasi like, barkada ko yan si Ergo since high school. Parang like, really? Ikaw, magsasawa ka sa games? And then parang it just sort of triggered in me na, wow, it's really, we've gotten to the point na like, things that you wouldn't normally think, parang nandun na tayo, like Ergo na magsawa sa games. So I was just kind of curious for you, yun nga, parang actually, hindi naman siya hidden, like, because you just reconnected with anime. Any titles in particular that you would recommend?
Oh my god. Okay, so this lockdown,
Short
I
lang,
watched
short
the
lang.
entirety of My Hero Academia and Haikyuu. Easily became part of my top 5, both of them. Ang ganda! Both of them!
Okay, okay. I've seen it on Netflix. Parang Hero Academia is available on Netflix. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, dokes. Not the usual. Sorry, I have a somebody was recommending to me the JoJo, but I've never watched it. Eh.
It's a meme machine. It's definitely on my list. So,
But it's really confusing. Parang she was trying to explain to me like so Jojo, we lost video again. Up. Okay, wait. Sorry. Uh, Pop out. Wait lang. Sorry. I'll get the camera back up on the stream. How does this work again? Okay, audio. Okay.
yep. Hello.
Okay, yan. Sorry, so about we got sidetracked by the anime. But sige, last question na talaga. You've done a lot of interviews, so I'll give you the last question. Was there ever any question that you wish had been asked or that you super prepared for because you thought it would be asked? What were those questions, and what's your answer to them?
Um, I guess you brought up one of the ones that I already like. If we're talking about fun questions, then I'm glad you asked about what anime I've been watching. Hunter
Okay.
x Hunter is another one. But the serious questions, when you ask about how we help solve misogyny in gaming and anything that has to do with the gender gap, I feel like, I'm one of the few people that's qualified to talk about it in the space. So
For sure.
feeling ko may maidadagdag talaga ako sa conversation compared to other questions that anybody in esports can answer. So you already actually asked me about it, which I'm happy about.
But so no, there's like no burning question na I wish somebody had asked this or yun nga, I was super prepared. You know how it's like parang it's like a test and then like you super studied for one particular
No.
topic. Wala naman.
I don't treat interviews like that kasi. But I don't know. Now that you asked, I'm trying to think what question would make me look good. But there's
No.
not really so much. Like I just play games. It's fine.
Okay, so thanks so much for joining us for In the Industry. You're our episode number 2 and super quality. I'm super happy so far with the series. We had Ergo for episode number 1 and then Jia Dee for episode number 2. So please tune in. This Friday, we're going to have our usual tech show. Pwede magtanong. It's our usual tech panel. It's the 4 of us and we'll take your tech questions live or the ones you asked via Facebook or YouTube or direct DM. And then the next in the industry guest is Mika Fabella, who actually is sort of connected also to Bren Esports. She was the general manager for the Philippine Overwatch team that went to BlizzCon last year. She's also a correspondent for TV5, an esports correspondent. And then the rest of the schedule you guys can see on the graphic, which has been flashing the entire interview. So thanks again for watching. Stay safe, and thank you again to our guest Jia Dee for gracing us with her presence. Thanks.